Hello, fellow YouTubers and subscribers. I'd like to welcome you all to The Fresh Eye. With this show, I watch and or catch up on shows that are old, new, live action, or animated. So this time, I'm watching a show that I'm surprised is actually receiving a second season, since it never looked too appealing from the first few trailers that I saw for season 1. But now, since it's apparently popular enough to gain a second season, it makes me curious as to what made this show so popular. This show in question is Sleepy Hollow. Now, this is very odd, seeing as Fox, the canceling guru, produces this show. So I guess I'll just have to take a look at this show's first season and try and see why this show is now a decent success. Okay, I guess I see the appeal of the show, and I would be lying if I didn't say I wasn't hooked in myself. Now, much like how Warehouse 13 started, it feels like the start of the show came off like the continuation of some other episode. So, the setting we're immediately placed in is a battle set in 18th century America, during the War for Independence. We see one soldier fight against a seemingly unstoppable man wielding an axe. And once they both die in the same spot, we cut to the soldier, Ichabod Crane, waking up in the 21st century. After this, we cut to a diner where two sheriff officers are eating. One is a woman, who will be this show's Mika, and the other is an older gentleman, played by the veteran actor and voice actor, Clancy Brown. Yeah, I get the feeling he's not gonna last in this episode. Now, after these two go over the common, I'm going to retire from this agency soon, discussion that almost all discussions between people will have in movies or TV, they head to a farm. Here they come across the horsemen in a barn, and take a guess who dies first. So after the policewoman gets a good look at the killer, we later see Crane being arrested. The reasoning why is pretty stupid, but I'll talk about it later. Once the police interrogate Crane, they eventually tell him that it's been over 200 years since he's been alive. And Captain America ain't got nothing on this guy. And once they bring him up to speed, they determine that he should go to a mental home, but the policewoman decides to drive him there herself. Along the way, she takes him to the place where he had woken up, and within
This tells of the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Come on.
Yep, it's going to be one of those adaptations. But I'll talk about this later as well. With that bit of knowledge, they later head over to a church where a reverend had just been murdered by the horsemen, and Crane is led by a hawk to the grave of his deceased wife, where he discovers that she was burned for witchcraft. And after the woman takes Crane to an asylum where they share a heart-to-heart conversation, information is later given to them in two separate ways. The policewoman, Abby, goes through older records and tape recordings made by Clancy Brown's character. This suggests that he has been doing this kind of research related to the Horsemen for decades. Crane's information is given to him by his wife, who isn't dead, but really is a witch. And she tells him that she is trapped by a demon and he needs to retrieve the huntsman's head so that he doesn't come to full power. After Abby and Crane regroup, it's revealed that a police officer played by John Cho is actually helping the horsemen. One gunfight in a graveyard later, Crane joins the force, and Abby agrees to stay in Sleepy Hollow. Okay, so let me address the times that I kept saying I'll talk about this later. The first one was them convicting Crane as the killer. Aside from the obvious head differences, they're wearing different colored clothing, and one of them is armed to the teeth while the other just stumbles in the street. I have to say, cops really do treat everything dangerously similar. And the second thing that I said that I would explain later was the kind of adaptation this is. I know from the setting that this is meant to be a modern...
Grandma, what big eyes you have.
The better to see you with, baby.
adaptation of Sleepy Hollow. I also figured from this episode that it was going to be a horror story in the same vein as Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. What I wasn't expecting was this show's build-up to a big apocalyptic war. I'll admit fully that I have never read the short story, but I can already guess that there was no war ever mentioned. And I will comment on why every big budget film adapted from simple, non-epic stories are always trying to insert some big war scene just so they can pretend to be Lord of the Rings or Narnia is starting to get a little annoying. This episode, on the other hand, didn't make me feel annoyed. Even watching a pastor metal bending a chain to fight the horsemen didn't really annoy me. Okay, it was a bit silly, and one could even argue a bit stupid, but it still didn't bother me. Now, maybe the reason why I wasn't annoyed because this is a TV show and whenever a movie does it, feels fast and forced. A TV show actually has time on its side, and you can build up to these battles. The other aspect that probably didn't make this show so annoying was the chemistry between Crane and Abby. I've seen these kind of interactions between these type of characters before, but it's like Pete and Micah times 10. Of course, given the fact that Crane is from the 18th century and he's with a black woman, a certain question is bound to come up. Luckily, it's only addressed once and handled in a very funny manner. Aside from that, seeing these two interacting with each other was pure gold, and I'll be somewhat surprised if these two are considered Fox's TV it couple. So, to wrap things up, this episode was a great introduction to the series. Watching this episode gave me the mixed sensation of watching shows like Gargoyles or Primeval. The mystery was definitely interesting to watch, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll try to have the next review sometime next week, or maybe even a bit later. So please, be patient and try not to spoil the rest of the show. In the meantime, take a look at my other Fresh Eye videos of the Sci-Fi Channel show Warehouse 13, where I already have talked about episodes 1 and 2. And episode 3 should be arriving more or less soon.